Hey, Patrick.
Hey, MichaelJ.
So
it's a new era, right?
Yeah, stuff's happened. Stuff's happened this week. So lots of things to talk about. Obviously, there's more Amonkhet and awesome new cards and so forth to talk about there. But also, I think we'd just be remiss to not just tip our hats to the long-standing, controversial, much-loved, and much-hated career of Sensei's Divining Top.
I don't know. Sensei's Divining Top gets no hat tip from me.
Really?
There are very few cards, probably zero, in the history of Magic that have cost as many human lifetimes as Sensei's Divining Top.
I love Sensei's Divining Top. I didn't mind playing against it in Legacy, but you know what? I get it. It eats a lot of time. I think it's we don't have to talk about just eating time, but it's facilitated some of the greatest, most elegant, most beautiful deck designs in the history of Magic the Gathering, not the least of which is one of the most important deck designs from, I think, in your career, which is Next Level Blue.
Look, I'm not saying that I'm not willing to dabble in the dark side when Sensei's Divining Top is legal. I'm just saying Sensei's Divining Top isn't legal anymore.
No, nowhere. Sensei's
still
Divining
legal in
Top
Vintage.
Is persona non grata.
Still legal in Vintage, so there you go.
I mean, for me, I'm always going to remember the Critical Mass. I'm always going to remember the Kuroda style red. I love the top.
You were playing Sensei's Divining Top before it was Sensei's Divining. I mean, you were even when it was something to sacrifice to Shrapnel Blast.
Oh yeah, man.
You've been playing Sensei's Divining Top since the beginning, since before it was good.
Sensei's Divining Top culling scales must have been the most difficult, annoying thing to play against ever, right? So it can either try to hit the top so the culling scales never goes away, or you can flip the top on your upkeep so the culling scales kills their thing. It's just like the lock. You're just drawing cards all the time. It's beautiful. I love it.
That's a fancy lock. It's not quite as hard of a lock as Counterbalance Sensei's Divining Top, but it was even more techie. It was. I think an awful lot of people just couldn't believe what was going on.
I think if the opponent, the best thing they could do is muster an Isamaru Hound of Kanda, culling scale Sensei's Divining Top is just fine. It's locky enough. Even if they have a worship, if they have no guys. The best is when they have pro-red guys, and you're like, I have pro-red guys in a worship. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know, Sensei's Divining Top? Little culling scales? But yeah, I loved it. But, nobody else did, apparently, including the folks who were in charge of the banned and restricted announcement of April 24th, Aaron Forsyth. So, just wanted to... I'm tipping my virtual hat to the top. I love the top. I love playing against it. I love outsmarting the top, actually. It's probably my favorite thing. I love it. And, other people didn't. It's okay. Magic's more than just about me.
No, I think I happen to personally have really enjoyed the first 7,000 or 8,000 activations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're on 8,057, it's just... I mean...
I don't know about 8,057. We're a might bit past that. But I think that Sensei's Divining Top, definitely one of the longest and most storied careers among cards in that set, in terms of just always being in the news, always something going on, always on everybody's watch list, always controversial. Does it suck? Is it strong? Is it busted?
Is it the best?
Combos? Do you use it in Vintage, Standard? Is it playable in Draft? What's the story?
Yeah, can you believe the articles back in the day? I think it was Ken Kruner was the leader of the band in terms of, this card isn't even playable in Draft. I don't know. I could just tell you, as an aspiring PTQ player, when your deck, Next Level Blue, was the it deck, the following two things were among the most satisfying things to me. Number one, cycling my Eternal Dragon, because you couldn't counter that with the top, so I could get to 7 to just cast my Eternal Dragon and knowing that you couldn't counterbalance it because you didn't have any 7s in your deck. That was one thing I liked. And the other thing was using my Bosiju to cast Biorhythm, which is something that I acquired enough lands because of my Eternal Dragon. Those are my favorite things to do. In your face, next level blue. Your deck won way more than mine. But
dude, I think it might be time for Sensei's Divining Top, actually. In Vintage, like with Gitaxian Probe and Gush restricted, there's never been... I mean, obviously Monastery Mentor is just, like, unbelievable in Vintage, right? It's just unbelievable. Best creature in Magic. At least it was before they restricted Gitaxian Probe and Gush. And it probably still is. But, dude, Sensei's Divining Top might have a renaissance in Vintage. Like, it might be time to shine. Because that is a great way. That is a great way to make some Monastery Mentor monks.
I mean, are we above just having 2 tops in play? Like, just top. That's pretty good, right? That works the way that I think it does, right?
I mean, yeah, you don't actually you don't end up with 2 in play for that long.
Oh, no, I'm just saying.
Crack them all, but yeah.
2, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's just, like, right there, it's just every token is not just a 1/1 with prowess, it's also +1/+1ing your team each time for however many you made the first time. So often what will happen is you can just put out a Monastery Mentor on turn, and keep in mind, you can still play 4 Mox Opals. So, like, you could still just play Monastery Mentor on turn 1, make a monk or 2, untap, and kill them. You know, and that's to say nothing of, I don't know, any blue cards you might cast.
You could still cast 1 Gitaxian Probe. They're not going to keep you from doing that.
Yeah, you can still cast 1. Maybe 2 if you have Yawgmoth's Will.
Ooh.
Yeah, which I think works well with Monastery Mentor anyway. But there's all sorts of things you can do. I just think it might be time. It might be Sensei's Divining Top's time to shine. And that's not even counting the possibility of making it cost 1 less. Because I think that there's a few different options that you might be into. It's just going to really end up depending. At the end of the day, you're probably going to want to just not do any of that. You're going to not do any of the fancy stuff and instead just, like, I don't know, play all busted cards and then...
I mean, I think Sensei's Divining Top... The fact that it's been, like, globally banned in almost every available format puts it in the busted cards category, right? It, like, just in a straight card for card quality.
That's why I was counting it.
It's not so much weaker than Gitaxian Probe, is it? Right? Like, it's pretty. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. It's much weaker than Gitaxian.
1 is like infinity more than 0.
Who could have seen Gitaxian Probe being too strong?
Anyone who had seen the card.
It's weird, because it's like when it was first previewed, people are like, this is broken. And then it's turned out to be broken in every format. Legacy coming soon.
I remember, like, the first time Gitaxian was legal, it was just like, I played 2 in my Cobblade deck. It was pretty good. That was the first assessment I had seen of it in constructed play. Yeah, I found it to be good also. It was very good, in my opinion, at looking at the opponent's hand so I could determine if I should go off with my Splinterson combo next turn. That was very good.
It's only a matter of time, man. Street Wraith, we got our eyes on you. It's like a Gitaxian Probe, but it's uncounterable, and you don't look.
But it puts creature in your graveyard. That's pretty good.
It does. But what I mean is that it's dangerous.
We're in violent agreement.
Yeah.
Speaking of violent agreement, let's cut it out with the ancient history cards and get with the new stuff.
There's so much we're going to have to hit today. There's so much. This set has so many interactions that go into weird different directions. And obviously the banned and restricted list left standard unscathed, which is questionable given Felidar Guardian.
Is going to need to do a lot of... I mean, maybe.
Dude, there's a lot to unpack about the new standard because let's just put it this way. Amonkhet was friendlier to some strategies, more hostile to other strategies, and it's really, really going to be a question of how does everything we're looking at should be through the lens of how does it interact with Felidar Guardian, with copycat decks, and how does it interact with fast aggro, like very freaking fast aggro.
Glorious End, good for Felidar Guardian decks or bad for Felidar Guardian decks?
Glorious End?
Glorious End.
Tell you what, you start. You tell me. What do you think?
So we talked a little bit about Glorious End and getting into the trials, right? So just a couple of things on that. You only need the kind of identified problem is that getting into the trials is not the emblem that makes it so you can't lose the game. It's not so durable, right? It's arguably less durable than an actual Platinum Angel, even though it's fast. But you only need it to be in play for one turn to have it pay off with your Glorious End. But the additional wrinkle that I've seen uncovered over the course of the last 7 days or so since the last time we had a podcast up is, man, Glorious End, getting into the trials, and Torrential Gearhulk all being friends. Now that is a glorious beginning. And so I think Glorious End is great. I like it because it's a counterspell. It's a counterspell that red aggro decks can play. It's a counterspell that other aggro decks can play. I think you just use it to break up somebody's combo or steal the turn so that you can kill them with your combo, right? Like, it's a great setup, man, I think.
It's too wild of a card to be a setup, man, in my opinion. It's a loose cannon. Like, it's kind of just it's definitely a crazy card. It's interesting. It might be busted, but man, you sure are longer on it than I am. We'll see.
I think it's bold. Glorious End and getting to the trials in the same set is not something.
What about Goblin Dark Dweller, though?
People could miss.
Why do you need Torrential Gearhulk? Goblin Dark Dweller is cheaper and on theme or on color.
Yeah, because. The only reason I think that Torrential Gearhulk is so much better, and I respect the Goblin Dark Dweller also, is you could use Glorious End as a counterspell if you're using a Torrential Gearhulk, right? So Goblin Dark Dweller, that's like a kind of a weird situation, right? Like typically if you use Goblin Dark Dweller to Glorious End, you're just using it to cut off your own Glorious End, right? Like I'm going to die, so I need to do this to not die.
Yeah.
But that's an application, sure. It's just less.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Gearhulk's just way better. I also just want to stop them in the middle of their the resolution of anything, whether it's their attack, their untap, anything.
Yeah,
not untap, but draw step, anything.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of things with Glorious End, right? Like it's a counter spell, but it's also like a fog. It's also counters a planeswalker activation. The thing that's great about it is if you're playing it with a great deal of strategy and kind of sequential planning, you can get the opponent when they're like most vulnerable and have shown you like the most weak spot. Like I'm gonna tap my mana and stuff. And even if they have a counter spell, it's actually not that bad for them to counter you because then you just don't have to worry about the Glorious End. It's just a different thing happened. So, you might not have gotten them for maximum, but, it could still... It's not like you have the lose the game trigger if it doesn't happen, So, I think getting it countered is so much less downside than it might seem ostensibly. But, yeah, that's the most exciting space...
So, wait, you never answered the question, though. Do you like it, or do you think it helps... Copycat, or it hurts Copycat?
I think the Copycat will probably not start it. I think it's a reasonable card for decks like Copycat to sideboard. Like if they're in a race, like it's a really interesting card to help in a race. If let's say you're under pressure against, I'm going to say Mardu. I don't really mean Mardu, like whatever the fast deck of the day is. Just use it to time walk them once and get your turn and kill them. Right? That's a function that isn't. Like, let's say they have, like, their draw that's like guy, planeswalker or something, and they're just going to kill you. Glorious End does something that a counterspell would not do, right? Like, you're like, all right, I'm going to counter that thing. Well, you're still going to lose to my next attack. This is a very different kind of functionality that you just basically steal the turn. And the other thing is you might not even have it, right? But Glorious End is also, it's automatically a cantrip because you just get your next turn, so you get your next draw step. So... maybe you're going to get another card drawing spell. Maybe you're going to get the card you needed to complete your combo.
That's not a cantrip.
Yeah, it's like functionally like a cantrip.
No, it's not. I mean, you draw a card for your turn, but that's because it's your turn. I guess. I mean, you get to see one more card.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have successfully communicated. that is my assessment. Communication has occurred. We are on the same veritable page.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Glorious End. I think that it's exciting, and I'm going to be curious to see how it ends up. It definitely has more danger than your average bear. Go ahead.
I just think that this might be too slow, but because there's copycat, I mean, even a regular Marvel deck might be too ferocious for this in terms of the overlap of speed and power. But do you remember our preview card, New Perspectives? Like, yep. I think like accelerating out New Perspectives into what's that cycling guy? The guy that gets land. The
monitor.
The Tusker guy. Like,
Chapin monitor.
Combining that with the black and 1 card that lets you get back everything you discarded this turn.
Shadow of the Grave.
I think that's gotta be just those 3 cards together. It's so exciting to me to tap.
And you might as well have Vizier of Tumbling Sands too, right?
Oh, the untapping thing, yeah. So
that way you have 8 things in your deck that can untap and get you some mana.
So, like, that's so exciting to me because, like, all these cards are in the same set, so maybe, I mean, I assume there's some cognizance there about their ability to be synergistic with each other. But it's just, like, so your next draw is, like, potentially so big, and you just get so many cards, and then just have, like, a narrow way to win. But your entire deck engine is predicated on drawing more and more cards, and it's hard for you to break out because your lands also draw you more cards. Like,
well, maybe. I mean, how many are you really going to play? Because if you're playing 6 drops in a deck with 20 tap lands...
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting challenge. I think it's going to be an interesting challenge on how to make this deck. In particular, I think the first person who figures out the right basic land count is going to be that person's the genius, and then everyone will just copy it, right? But, like, the perfect basic land, like, how many forests do you want? I think the answer is 1. How many swamps do you want? I think the answer is somewhere between 2 and 4, right? Like, you need to be able to get multiple untapped swamps on the turn you're going off. So that's, like, really exciting to me to try to figure out.
Well, there's also the question of if you want anything like Weirding Wood, right? Like, if you put Weirding Wood down, not only is it an accelerator, getting your New Perspectives down on turn 5 instead of 6. Obviously the clue you can potentially sack, help make sure you just have extra cards. It's like cycling without having to actually pitch a card, before you go off. But then the big thing about Weirding Wood is that once you actually have it down, Vizier of Tumbling Sands nets you 2 mana. And Weirding Wood is a 5-color fixer. So if your deck is like playing lots, an above average amount of cycling lands, your mana might actually be kind of sketchy. You might end up having to just mostly play. You might only be able to get to play like really 2 colors confidently. And maybe you have like 1 island, right? But like you might end up just playing like, 1 forest, 1 island, 3 swamps, and then a bunch of blooming marshes or something, right? Like it might be that you just have to support all your other colors besides black and green off of a few cycling lands here and there, but maybe also the stuff like Weirding Wood. I mean, that's like, I don't know, just untapping it with Vizier of Tumbling Sands just seems kind of exciting.
Do you want to do, like, Gift of Paradise, too? There's multiple cards like Weirding Wood.
Maybe. Those 2 are the 2 that get you actually the mana that you need, but I'm not sure. I mean, it's nice that Gift of Paradise, the extra life, might be, give you might be valuable for some survivability early on. But in general, I think Weirding Wood's a stronger card. But I could imagine even a mixture or wanting more than 4. It's just that it gets kind of clunky playing with those kind of accelerators.
Oh, and I'm sure because there's going to be so many cards in your deck that are dedicated to mana access, like that. At some point, maybe I don't know. You run the risk of being flooded. So, what is the upper?
But each one is also a stopper too. That's part of the reason why.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't get to cycle them.
What's the upper limit to the number of basic lands you can hunt out in one turn? Is it 20?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's. It depends on how weird you want to get.
I'm sorry. Just using like the two kind of conventional cards, the Tusker and the black and 1 card, Shadow of the Grave. Like you can cycle that 4 times, right? That gets you 4, and then Shadow of the Grave 4 times, right? So that's 20. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I mean I don't know if that's fair to describe as the upper limit because you can't really do that. And any of the fancy stuff that you do, you're going to end up having access to more than just that. Like there's other stuff you could do if you wanted. So it's really a question of what other cards are you putting in the mixture because like when you're going, you could in theory play, Splendid Reclamation, for instance.
Oh, you certainly could.
You also could theoretically, I don't know what the missing link is, but there's other weird stuff you can do, right? Like the Sheffet Monitor can go find Painted Bluffs or Sun-Scorched Desert. Right? There's weird other options that you may be in the market for. So I don't know. I don't know what all. There's also the fact that you could commit to memory. Like each Time Twister lets you go through all the rest of your stuff anyway, right? So I don't know what the upper limit is. I really don't. It might be that you can do some absolutely crazy amounts of lands, but there's enough weird interactions that it's hard to know what the upper bound is.
Yeah, Time Twister actually changes that entirely, right?
Oh yeah, particularly when you have access to stuff like Torrential Gearhulk with commit memory.
Yeah, so 2 things there. Like we're already talking about an upper limit of over 80 if you're talking about commit to memory. So talk a second about the Torrential Gearhulk combination with commit to memory, because I think it's a little non-intuitive. So commit is an instant, right? So it's a forecasting cost instant that puts target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's library second from the top. Memory is the aftermath version. It's for for each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard and then draws 7 cards. So so what you're saying is you can use Torrential Gearhulk to cast Memory, even though that's the sorcery half?
Right. You can even do that on your opponent's end step. Right, like it's one of the drawbacks to Time Twister is typically that your opponent gets to use the cards and their mana first, right? But if you commit, just casting commit is great anyway. Commit's just like a good card without even the memory half. And then when you actually on turn 6, you can actually just memory during your opponent's end step, untap, and you can have the first crack at all the cards. That's like very exciting.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's weird. It seems so strange because memory is a sorcery, but like the way the rules work with these aftermath cards and something like Torrential Gearhulk is that Torrential Gearhulk looks at the card, says, "Is it an instant?" And it sees commit is an instant, and it says, "Okay, this is the card," and then you choose which half you're actually playing, and you choose memory, and your opponent calls a judge because this seems crazy. But that's actually how it works.
The judge is like, "I'm sorry, but this is the ruling."
Likewise, if you really wanted to, you could actually go. You could play Spring to Mind. Yep. You can play Spring to power out a turn 4 Goblin Dark Dweller, and then when you Goblin Dark Dweller your Spring Mind, you can actually just mind, right? Like that's. So, because you're like, I choose this card, and then it turns out it's mine, because it's like the whole boom bust thing.
Man, that kind of makes me want to play Spring to Mind, but I don't know if it makes me want to play Spring to Mind enough. Like, how do you... How do you feel about Spring to Mind? Like, I think I love it. I'm not sure. It's like one of those things I'm scared to love.
You'd have to really be in the market for that kind of a thing. I think it's a little fancy, but it's got potential.
I mean, it's like a really bad rampant growth and then a really inspiration.
Sort of. I don't know. It's like a rampant growth, but you bought a Whispers of the Muse thing, right? Like, but it's not just Whispers of the Muse. The inspiration is not inspiration. That's the part that I think is tricking you. So when you Spring to Mind, it's actually a draw 3 on the backside.
Oh, it's like a modified deep analysis, right? I think that's it's 6 casting costs for a deep analysis instead of 2, but it's really attractive with Spring,
right? I mean, so when you cast Opportunity, how many cards do you end up?
You're +3, right?
Right.
This is the same.
No. This is not the exact same. Because Spring gets you 1, and then mine get you 2 more. So you're only net 2, but you are net 2, right? Like you aren't, like if you just rampant growth, you're net 0. And if you were to rampant growth and inspiration, you'd be net 1. If you Spring and then mind, you're actually net 2. So it really is actually a Jace's Ingenuity that you're paying 1 extra for. So it's a rampant growth you pay 1 extra for, and then a Jace's Ingenuity. That said, it's not like Jace's Ingenuity is what I think this Felidar Guardian Heart of Kirin format is calling for. But, it's worth considering because I think Spring to Mind has it's 3 cards, not 2.
I had only terrible things to say about Jace's Ingenuity when it came out, I think. But then Jace's Ingenuity did nothing but serve me so well in so many terms. The last time it was Splinter Twin type 2 card combo and standard. Jace's Ingenuity was great for me, actually. Maybe it will be great now. I mean, if you have a draw-go-ish deck that has some mana acceleration, Spring to Mind might be a thing. I could see that kind of deck resisting copycat combo decks.
I don't know. There's a lot of options. Maybe it's just that, think of it this way. In general, this is a rampant growth that you have to pay 1 up front so that later you'll get a Jace's Ingenuity. But, you're not really getting a Jace's Ingenuity completely this way because in some way, because of the fact that you're having to pay more, it's, I don't know, I think it's kind of, this card is almost exactly normal rate. So I think if you don't do anything fancy, there's better cards. There's better things you can do. This card's just, you get a cantrip inspiration for a cantrip extra worth of cost. So, anyway, I wanted to actually get your take on a very, very different Felidar Guardian combo. It's not that different, but it is different. I think this one has the potential to just be a game changer in the format. Felidar Guardian plus Liliana Death's Majesty. Isn't that messed up? Why is that okay? So you have to. There's a little. This one's a little less overt than Saheeli Rai. If you have, there's lots of little things. I don't know what the right implementation is yet, but let's walk through a couple of the things you could do. So let's say theoretically you're just playing your copycat deck and the game goes on, right?
Yep.
And at some point you go, Liliana, I'm going to get back my Felidar Guardian. My Felidar Guardian blinks Liliana, and then I'm going to get back anything else I want. Let's say maybe you get back a second Felidar Guardian and get infinite triggers. That's interesting. Or
infinite. Oh, because you blink the other Felidar Guardian.
You're not getting anywhere other than you're just. Alternatively, what if you want to get? What if you have a sack outlet? Right, what if you actually just have a sack outlet in play, like a Yahenni, Undying Partisan, or a Defiant Salvager? If you just have a 0-mana sack outlet in play, you can go Felidar Guardian, my Liliana, my Felidar Guardian, back and forth, sacrificing infinite times. And it's not just that you can put as many counters as you want on the Defiant Salvager. you also are making progress because every iteration you're milling yourself for 2. So you get to flip your deck. When you flip your deck and have Liliana and have Felidar Guardian, you can just reanimate whatever you want.
Like
you can reanimate everything.
You get like Torrential Gearhulk Fling, right?
Well, that's one option. If you have Defiant Salvager in play, you can Torrential Gearhulk Fling and just win that way.
Yeah, that's it.
Definitely. But if you have Undying Partisan, and I don't know, maybe Defiant Salvager is enough. But like if you have Undying Partisan, then Partisan or whatever it is, you can, if you wanted, you could still make progress. I don't know if you would really come to this, but like you can get back you can have your Torrential Gearhulk, get back Displace. And then when you displace, you can blink the Torrential Gearhulk and a Felidar Guardian. And now you can get back whatever you want and still be looping infinitely. Because remember, you also get all your Felidar Guardians. You can get lots of stuff. There's a lot of different ways you might want to do it, but like, I don't know. This seems like, and that's just that. I mean, there's also like, once you're flipping your whole deck, maybe you get back something like you get back something that gives all your guys haste, like Samut Voice of Dissent, right? Like because depending on what all you what all you play in your deck, you get to get all your Felidar Guardians in play. But you also get to get all of your clone guys in play if you have any clones. And I don't know, man. If you have Goblin Dark Dweller, you get to just cast a sorcery. You don't have to just be limited by instance. You could cast a sorcery.
So do you see this as a potential combination that would spawn like a black-white or a black-white something else deck? Or do you think of this as incremental to the Saheeli?
5-color Saheeli. The Saheeli combo is just so good. It's like this just stacks with it.
Yeah, the Saheeli combo itself seems stronger than Liliana and Felidar Guardian. But if Liliana and Felidar Guardian certainly has some play, as you've
and Liliana
have to do
Liliana is just an amazing card anyway.
And Saheeli's a less amazing card, right?
Saheeli's way less amazing than Liliana on its own. Liliana is just a great card by itself. But you also just could do a variety of other busted sick things outside of just the copycat combo if you have a Liliana, because it's already a reanimator spell, right? Like your deck it's very like copycat decks have already wanted to play Oath of Jace. Oath of Jace is such an exciting card to blink with Felidar Guardian anyway, and Liliana and Saheeli are already like wonderful enchantments not enchantments, planeswalkers to be carrying in that way. But if you have Oath of Jace, you can just discard some amazing fatty that you might want to reanimate, whether it's an Ulamog or anything else. Right? Like you can actually just Oath of Jace away both Felidar Guardian and something else if you want. And once you drop Liliana, you can just be, have both of them already in the graveyard. I don't know.
Nahiri has a place in this universe.
Nahiri is very exciting. She synergizes with Oath of Jace. She synergizes with Oath of Liliana. She synergizes with even Felidar Guardian to a degree. But I also just like the card in the format because of the amount of artifacts and enchantments that are worth killing. I like dropping Nahiri and just exiling a Heart of Kirin or something.
I like Nahiri because you can use Nahiri to search for your Saheeli Ride just by cycling through your deck, right? But you can also, when you ultimate Nahiri, you can just get the cat to finish the combo. But along the way, you can have discarded a bunch of cards that, could be synergistic with a Liliana. So, like, let's say your deck has, like, I don't know, 1 Liliana, 2 Lilianas, like 2 Nahiris, 4 Saheelis somewhere, some 4 cats. Like, they all...
I don't know. I kind of want to play 4, man.
4 Nahiris?
I want to play 4 of all of them. Nahiri, Liliana, and Saheeli. Like, I don't know if you can really play 4 Nahiri.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of casting cost. But, they're very powerful cards. But the net is that 2 of them are just an insta-kill, right? Other 2 or so, depending on the configuration, are extraordinarily synergistic with each other, right? Like, you can use Nahiri to facilitate, a fatty with Liliana, and then just get a different fatty, right? That is going to go off the Nahiri ultimate. Or I mean, if the game even goes that far, right? So just discard something reanimated with Liliana, they're just in trouble. Depending on how, let's say, indestructible it might be. But I think that all those guys are they work so well together. I doubt we could play 4 of all of them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the bottleneck seems to be sack outlets. Like it's not like Undying. Yahenni and Defiant Salvager are not the worst. They're definitely not the worst, but they're not exactly on plan, straight up.
I think that Yahenni is probably a really good card, but I just don't love it in this kind. What we're talking about. It seems like a odd use of my mana. I think Defiant Salvager is substantially weaker. I don't know.
Defiant Salvager, but that's the kill with Fling if you want that.
Yeah.
It is so nice to have the engine that you're relying on be indestructible, though. You need something to start it, right? But there is something nice about that. Speaking of combos, though, what about Anointed Procession? So Anointed Procession is the 3 and a white enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. So ostensibly, you can use this with Embalm or just token making. But what if you did more?
What more? A brood monitor?
For instance, if you have Anointed Procession in play, Anointed Procession makes Saheeli make 2 copies of something, right? Or in many ways, it can function sort of like that artifact that copies all the triggers. What is it called? The one from Kaladesh.
Oh, I was going to say Rings of Brighthearth, but that's not the one you're talking about.
No. The one that they just made. Panharmonicon?
Panharmonicon, yeah.
Yeah. So Panharmonicon can double a lot of triggers. And Anointed Procession can double a lot of triggers. And once you have that many things that can... it's more stacking with the whole... what's the thing that blinks with energy? There's a few different combos that you can do. Let me give you an example. Whirler Virtuoso. If you have Whirler Virtuoso, every time you pay 3 energy, you get 2 Thopters, right?
Yep.
And if say every creature or every artifact or if they gave you energy, then you're that much closer. You only need you're at this point you only need 1 more piece before it's hyper efficient. For instance, if you have exactly I don't know. There's so many different moving parts. There was
a lot of combos with if you have 3 pieces, including a Whirler Virtuoso, you just have all the stuff that you need, right? Whirler Virtuoso and 2 cards that I can't think of, but we've talked about this in the past.
So how about Anointed Procession when you have things that can copy Torrential Gearhulk, right? There's a variety of, or for instance, if you the Embalm, the clone Embalm.
Yep. If
you embalm the clone when you have Anointed Procession, you get 2 copies of something. That's already kind of interesting. But once you start getting into the space of copying things like Goblin Dark Dwellers or Torrential Gearhulk, or making copies of Goblin Dark Dwellers or Torrential Gearhulk, you start just doing some pretty wild things, to say nothing of any amount of Saheeli or Felidar Guardian shenanigans. It's just, I think it's another piece of the puzzle to potentially consider.
So I think this is probably a great card if there's a grindy creature matchups. right? Like if you're just playing a bunch of Embalm, like you're just going to get way ahead if you play this, or if there's like it's going to sound weird, an Embalm mirror match. Like Anointed Procession is going to be the mirror breaker in that case.
What about if you have Eldrazi Displacer with anything that makes 2 Scions when it enters the battlefield, such as Eyeless Watcher or Drowner of Hope? If you just have an Anointed Procession in play, your Eldrazi Displacer can make your Drowner of Hope blink ad nauseum as much as you want, and you end up with just an arbitrarily large number of Scions and colorless mana, and you can tap everything all the time as much as you want.
So that's actually really interesting. Like you could just play Anointed Procession in a deck with Drowner and Eldrazi Displacer and like maybe just a couple other token producers, right? Just like Gideon would be fine, or Nissa would be fine. You're just like making 2 tokens at a time.
Right, it's not infinite with the Eldrazi Displacer, but you might want that 2/1 flyer. You might want that 2/1 flyer that makes a 1/1 Scion.
Just imagine the situation, right?
Every random thing.
3rd turn Gideon, block your guy, Anointed Procession, 2 tokens a turn. Like that's a very defensible position until you get to the point where you're drownering, and then you just go off at that point. But like your position is insane, actually. Like if your opponent's playing fair, like Anointed Procession plus Nissa is actually pretty hard to beat if you don't have flyers, and then like Anointed Procession plus Ishkana. Isn't that I can't count that high. Is that like 8? 100?
7?
14 bodies? Like I don't know. It's a lot, but like those are all cards you would want to play, right? Like that's the way that I try to think about synergies. Like, is Anointed Procession good by itself? No. But what if you played it with 20 other spells that it's good with? The Anointed Procession plus anything is now very good.
There's lots of very good cards that work well with Anointed Procession. Lots, right? Like, you might want to... I don't know where you'd fall on the whole, like, Regal Caracal or the Angel of Invention.
Did we not talk about Regal Caracal? That was, like, one of my favorite cards in the set.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that card's dope. And if you have Anointed Procession, I mean, now you're talking like some serious Deranged Hermit type of time. More than Deranged Hermit. Well, you're already at 11. It's ridiculous. And you might play Sacred Cat or True Heart Duelist. You might just want more Eldrazi stuff. Like, I actually don't know that you don't want Eyeless Watcher. Eyeless Watcher, it's not that bad on its own. It's 3 bodies. And if you've got like stuff to pump your tokens, and it's potentially an accelerator. But the thing that's exciting is, of course, if you have Eldrazi Displacer and Eyeless Watcher, you're infinite.
I mean, there is a Soul Warden right now, right?
There's plenty of that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could just you don't even have to kill them. You can just Soul Warden them out.
Well, you also just have an infinite number of blockers and mana. I mean, there's lots of things you might do, and you can. Eldrazi Displacer loves having infinite mana. You can also just displace everything.
Is this the 3 casting cost Soul Warden? Is that just a decent defense against Felidar Guardian combo? Like they have 1 power and he gains 1 life.
Well, you're talking Pious Evangel?
Yeah, does that work that way?
No, isn't Pious Evangel just your No, it works. It's anybody's. Yeah, I mean, Pious Evangel does stop the Saheeli combo straight up. Like if they don't have anything else. So that's something.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that never came up as tech, because that's like enormously annoying, I think, for some people. Like, it's not that they can't kill it, right? They have stuff, but surely it'd be like, I can't believe that I'm going to use my 1 removal spell on this Pious Evangel. I guess I have to. And then, you have other stuff going on.
So actually, in that vein, what do you think about Trespasser's Curse as an anti-Felidar Guardian combo, or card, I guess?
Which one
is Trespasser? It's 1 in a black enchantment or a curse. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under enchanted player's control, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Oh, that seems great.
So it's better than the authority one, right? Like,
well,
in some ways, it's different. it's different, but I mean, it has like a more pronounced impact on them, and it has like a few interactions. Like if you're playing an aggressive deck, it actually puts pressure on them. Each time they play a Rogue Refiner, each time they play a Feldar Guardian defensively, they are losing extra life. But that adds up. It doesn't take very many extra life before you got your cards worth, to say nothing of stopping their combo. And this is an aura. There's a few random cool things you can do. Like you could, if you're playing some kind of like open the armory deck that would go find siege modification to power up your 7-11, I would play one Trespasser's Curse. Why not? And you could just go get the Trespasser's Curse with your open the armory, put it on your opponent, and they might not even be able to win.
It's a small thing, but because Trespasser's Curse is an aura, he's also friends with SRAM, right?
Yep.
I don't know, that kind of small thing, maybe a good
Well,
thing.
SRAM gained a lot anyway from all the cartouches, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then Trespasser's Curse being an aura, and this probably isn't going to work out, but it might. Sigarda's Aid. Sigarda's Aid has a whole new lease on life in this set because of all the cartouches and the red unstable mutation. Sigarda's Aid is that white, it's just single mana. Your auras and equipment can be played as though they had flash, and all your equipment, when you play it that way, gets equipped to the creature automatically. So if you have Sigarda's Aid on turn 1, you just put down Sigarda's Aid, boom. Now all your auras have flash, so you can actually. The main thing you'd want to do is flash down the cartouches. If you could flash down, Cartouche of Solidarity at instant speed, you are gonna just blow them out. It's like they can't even just play the normal game. If you just have a bunch of auras in your deck, your auras are going to be, it's, potentially very devastating for them. And as an added little bonus, if you have Trespasser's Curse, when your opponent tries to go off, you could just respond with Trespasser's Curse, and then they can't really make any more progress.
Yeah, is there anything like where they're going to explosively make a whole bunch of guys? Because the thing about Trespasser's Curse is if you do it that way, they have the opportunity to not go off. Like I'm really excited. Obviously, just the ability to play this way gives you another tool to stop their combo, which is very attractive. But they're
well, what I
love the ones where you just kill them when they go off.
Yeah, in this case, you're not killing them. You're just leaving them unable to win and vulnerable. Like if you just put out the authority or any of that kind of stuff, your opponent can plan for it. But if they just tap out to kill you, and your Mardu deck flashes down a Trespasser's Curse, now, like, maybe you can untap and have enough mana to actually kill their Feldar Guardian or their Saheeli or whatever. You attack and their Saheeli dies.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Trespasser's Curse it's at the very least, it's interesting.
Right? I think it's great. It's a great option against that strategy.
Well, it also is a kill card in your, the Eldrazi Displacer decks that we were just talking about.
Yep.
If you have Trespasser's Curse, you can actually blink any creature of your opponent's as much as you want, over and over and over again, and kill them. Because the Eldrazi Displacer sends it out and then back immediately, so you can just do this over and over again.
Yep.
It only takes, it's a bargain. For 60 mana, you can drain your opponent out, donate illusions them right out.
Yeah, I mean, all you needed was infinite mana / infinite power to do this. What's another little bit there? The thing is that Eldrazi Displacer Anointed Procession, it's actually pretty close to being one color if you want it, but I think it probably Bance is going to be the mature version of playing this in Standard, but it could be white. Like there's just a ton of stuff that you can do, because I think the Pious Evangel gives you defense against the Saheeli Rai combo. Obviously not like lockdown defense, but you have the Caracal. All these things are working very nicely together without having to go in different colors, but probably Bance is the best. Just a guess.
Yeah. I could see it.
I mean, just straight up on 5. I mean, maybe if you had access to green and white, maybe you play a mix. But I think, like, generally speaking, the Caracal is a more exciting offensive card, but Ishkanah is a much more exciting defensive card. I don't know if it depends on the metagame, or you play one of each, or some mix, but I could imagine if you were a white deck, you're just like slam down Procession, and then all the Caracals I can cast after that. Just gonna come down aggro style.
I mean, there's a variety of weird other directions that you could consider. Like, I don't know how it fits in, but like Honored Hydra counts as a token when you embalm it. That's an interesting thing to double from Anointed Procession. That's the Roar of the Worm. Yeah, 5 and a green, 6/6 trample with embalm of 3 and a green. So, like, when you embalm the Honored Hydra, like if you were playing some sort of if you have enough ways to like discard your Honored Hydra early on, or just play it for value. But like, if you end up fusing this with any kind of a Noose Constrictor strategy, it's worth noting that Honored Hydra can be copied by Anointed Procession. And actually, in the space of Anointed Procession, it's less likely to get there, but something that might stack in the same deck is the Second Harvest.
Just a second on the Honored Hydra. That card is really impressive, right? He's just like, Roar of the Worm is a tournament staple in its era. Like, this card is just better in multiple ways. Right? It's cheaper on the front side. It has trample. Yep. The original
on the front side, it's a creature.
Yeah, being a creature is generally speaking better than being a token creature.
Right. The only drawback is you can't roar twice straight up. But like, you weren't casting Roar that often straight up,
Yeah, that it's very unusual that's going to be the disadvantage. But actually, yeah, I would tend to say that's not going to be too common. But the pluses are enough, I think, that you'll be very attracted to running that card.
Yep. Yeah, I think that card's very exciting, particularly obviously with Noose Constrictor.
So, Second Harvest, you were talking about, that's an enchantment that costs...
instant.
I'm sorry, instant. That costs 2 GG. For each token you control, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. That, also very synergistic with all these cards we're talking about, playing a lot of tokens. That's
the one that... I don't know if there's anything there, but it's interesting to me that, like, when you Torrential Gearhulk a Second Harvest, like, let's say you make a copy of your Torrential Gearhulk, right? Like, you Saheeli your Torrential Gearhulk, play Second Harvest, then you get another. So first of all, when you Saheeli your Torrential Gearhulk and you have Anointed Procession in play, you get 2 Gearhulks, and then each of those 2 Gearhulks can flash something back. And each Second Harvest you have makes 4 more gear. Like, the first one would make 4 Gearhulks, and the second one would make 8 Gearhulks. So, like, I know that's like lots of cards, and my God, is that Magical Christmas Land. But that is also 40 power worth of Gearhulks with haste. So, like, it is kind of interesting, right? Like, there's something potentially exciting there. Now,
I'm sorry, really, I missed something. Why do the Gearhulks have haste?
The Saheeli.
But the second harvested Gearhulks. Oh, do they copy the condition of having haste?
They also copy it being an artifact. I mean, they copy everything about it, right? Like, they don't copy something that's on it, but they copy the properties of the token.
Okay, that wasn't obvious to me. I thought that only the first one would have haste.
No, yeah, I think they all just have haste, because I think that those tokens.
I think you're right. It just wasn't obvious to me.
Okay, so I don't know. It's fancy. It is fancy to say the least.
That's pretty exciting. Like, it's if you're just like 6 mana Torrential Gearhulk on tap, 3+4, 7 mana. Do this. It's right there.
Well, it also it plays into. There's a lot of overlap with some of the cards of the Liliana Saheeli stuff, the Feldar Guardian stuff we were talking about. I don't know. There's like a lot of like ambitious stuff you can do.
Excuse me.
But I don't know how to put all the pieces together yet. What other combos do you have your eye on in this set? And we don't have to just talk about combos. There's also just other sick cards, but I've just been kind of blown away by how challenging some of the combinations are to crack. Like how challenging it is to put all those pieces together.
How late do you think Magma Spray went into the file?
I don't know. Why?
I think Magma Spray smells to me like a card that was added to the file very late in response to, those certain 3/2 artifacts.
Come on, Scrap Heap Scrounger?
Yeah. It doesn't seem... I mean, maybe it's intuitive to just have been in the set because of the Embalm creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they planned on making Magma Spray anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, they wanted there to be a progression. I don't know. I think Magma Spray makes a lot of sense. I would have been surprised if they didn't start with Magma Spray.
The one thing I know about the upcoming standard is if you want to kill a creature for a red mana, you're going to be able to do that. You have a variety of ways to do
that. So here's a combo for you. The Monument, Rona's Monument. Green creature spells cost you 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So if you have Rona's Monument, obviously you can do some really sick things in a deck that just has tons of green creatures, right? Like, Channeler Initiate, the Rishgar, Pima Renegade, any amount of just lots of good 2 and 3 casting cost creatures. You can get a lot of mana per turn out of your Rona's Monument, but also you're putting a huge amount of +2/+2 triggers down, and if you have Paradox Engine, Greenbelt Rampager, you can actually just kill your opponent outright. Because if you have Greenbelt Rampager, Servant of Conduit, Paradox Engine, that right there gives you unlimited triggers, and then Rona's Monument kills them. And these are all fine cards on their own. I mean, Paradox Engine is the sketchy one, but I mean, out of Rona's Monument, Greenbelt Rampager, Servant of Conduit, those are all fine cards.
I think that just Rona's Monument by itself as a card, it's an okay investment, right? The question I'd have is how many you're going to play, because it is a legendary artifact. But once it's in play, it's paying for itself back, right, because of the condition about reducing casting costs. But it's so much efficacy. Like, if every single... think about it like this. When you play a Verdurous Gearhulk, that has a tremendous impact on the game, right? It's extraordinarily scary what it does with a lot of boards. Rona's Monument does not quite that much, but does half that much with every single creature card you cast. And they don't all have to cost 5. In fact, if you were going to actually do it with a Verdurous Gearhulk, it would cost less, right? So I think it's probably not that hard to just, play Rona's Monument on turn 3 and then, presumably on tap with a creature in play and then just slam your opponent for 8 or something and then just have a bunch of guys in play. Like, just... Very common play pattern, I would guess.
There's also interesting implications of using Rona's Monument with flash creatures. Even though it doesn't reduce the casting cost of Spell Queller, you can Spell Queller in the middle of combat if you wanted, right? Like, you could, the fact that you can use Rattle Chains, for instance, or whatever, to just dominate combat, that's at least interesting.
That's very interesting.
Additionally, Rona's Monument with double strike creatures is, of course, interesting. But most of all, I think, with Samut, Voice of Dissent, or I shouldn't say most of all, but Samut, Voice of Dissent is the one that I kind of just have on the brain with these monuments. I'm not as sure about Rona's Monument with Samut, other than to say that, double strike and haste is great stuff, and Samut loves costing less. But Samut, Voice of Dissent with the white one, Okatra's Monument.
So let's break down Samut for a second. So Samut is a green creature, right? So Samut typically costs 3 red-green, so 5 total. But with Rona's Monument, only costs 4, right? That's actually great as a natural curve, right? 3 into 4. Mm-hmm. And Samut has a ton of abilities. Flash, Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste. So Flash and Haste on one creature is a little redundant seeming, but they're both great abilities. Double Strike, so just the boringest thing that you could do with Samut.
Well, no, it's not. No, it doesn't pump itself, though. Because it's a when cast trigger. So Samut won't be in play yet.
No, what I'm saying is... I see what you're saying. So I was thinking that Samut's 10 power in. No?
No. But Samut's still awesome with Rona's Monument because you can... first of all, you could use it as Flash just to blow them out in combat once in a while. But after you have Samut in play, all your creatures pump. They're giving Samut trample, and you're getting 4 extra damage per creature. And if the creature costs 2 or less, it only costs 1, really. So you end up doing some pretty wild things there. You're also the abilities of Samut are kind of hard to take in completely. It's the 3/4 double strike, vigilance, haste, flash. Other creatures you control have haste. Tap and pay a white, untap another target creature. So another thing that Samut can do with the white monument, Okatra's Monument, which is white creatures cost you 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. If you have Okatra's Monument and that enchantment, the 1 and a green one from Shadows over Innistrad block, you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's like it gives you all the mana. It's like Earthcraft. Sam Black loves this card, and with good reason.
Cryptolith, right?
Yeah, so Cryptolith Rites. If you have Cryptolith Rites and the dwarf from Kaladesh block, that's 1 and a white, Aviary Mechanic. It's 1 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, you may return another target permanent you control to its owner's hand. This is like lots of cards, right? But if you end up on some sort of like Project X type of time where these cards are like kind of fitting together in different ways anyway, it's amusing that each time you bounce the Aviary Mechanic, you're netting mana and tokens. Because it only costs 1 mana to play the Aviary Mechanic, but when the mechanic is in play, you can tap it since it has haste because of Samut. So you'll pay for itself anyway. So a mechanic can bounce itself infinitely, all by itself, because of that green enchantment in Samut. Because the monument makes it only cost 1. However, the monument's also making you all these 1/1s. So you end up with as many 1/1s as you want, and they all have vigilance, and they can all tap for mana. So it's lots of stuff. But if you're playing, a bunch of the cards are decent, and if you have enough reason to be playing them on their own, I always like knowing what all the combos are that are kind of the bounds.
I mean, Ronus' Monument, which is where we started on the Monument cycle, and Ronus is just a great combo, right? Like, Ronus' Monument just fulfills Ronus' condition. Like, oh, did you need a bigger creature? Here I am.
Yeah. I think the green one is the best just in terms of being able to, because of the Green Belt Rampager combo and being able to, and green just appreciating having their creatures cost 1 less. But I think the other ones have there's a lot of utility.
I think the red one has some serious potential because of all the madness creatures in red, right? Like Hazard's Monument. Like,
great point.
First of all, it has the words "draw a card" on it, which those are special words in Magic the Gathering. All of these are cost reduction abilities, which are if there are 2 things that have ruined the most games or realized the most games, depending on your perspective, it's cost reduction plus a bunch of things that say draw a card. And Hazard's Monument has both of those text types on it. I don't know. Maybe
it's particularly interesting with Falkenrath Gorger, right? Like once you have the Falkenrath Gorger in play, all your vampires. I mean, maybe you're just wanting to just play cards that all have madness anyway. But if you have Falkenrath Gorger in play, all your vampires, each time you cast one, you loot, and then if you madness off the looting, you get to madness again. I mean, loot again.
Yeah.
Kind of explosive.
I don't think you need to get paid off that many times before it's, quote, paid for itself. And there are other things that you get off of it, right? Like just the ability to madness a fiery temper might be good. Or, I mean, this sounds boring, but it's been great in so many decks. Just discard a Drownyard Temple. I don't know, like fix your hand. Like fix your hand is. That's a pretty good one. Like, imagine your cards are like a creature and a Cathartic Reunion. Well, just discarding the Cathartic Reunion to get another card is pretty good in that situation.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think Hazard's Monument is one of the least exciting ones on its face, but has the highest ceiling. That's the way I'd look at it. It's like, maybe it's probably going to be one of the worst of the monuments, whereas Ronus's Monument is almost certainly going to be multiple copies in a deck that makes top 8 of an opener better. I think Alkara's Monument has a lot of things going for it. I think Hazard's Monument is like probably not going to be very good, but if one of them is going to be stupid good, I think Hazard's Monument might be the one.
What do you think about the black one, just for value?
Bantu's Monument. So
Bantu's Monument.
Bantu's Monument has the abilities black creature spells cost 1 less to cast, so similar to the other monuments. But in addition, it has whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Of course, I love this card. Right? It's the thing I like so much about it is it doesn't have any additional mana cost. Right? When you have an ability like this, so often, it's like you need to pay 1 to get paid off on it. It's just like if every single guy I play just has like a little pinging effect, it's just so much easier to win. And then the incidental life gain is the best. Billy Moreno and I used to talk about just stuff like on a Ghost Council. Like you're trying to do 20, your entire deck is optimized to do 20. You're counting your packets of damage. You don't need to have that many Ghost Council pings before the opponent's math is just off. If they're the kind of deck that that does 20, not that does 60.
Yep.
I like it. I like costing people life.
It's worth noting that all these monuments can be tapped for Inspire, and then you're getting 2 mana out of them effectively, or more.
One of the things that's really exciting to me is breaking the legendary status on the monuments. So, Ronus's Monument's a legendary artifact, so you can't really have 2 in play. But you could have, like, Ronus's Monument and Hazard's Monument in play at the same time, for example, which would allow you to get, like, double paid off on Samet. I think that maybe, I just think of this deck that Tsuyoshi Vegeta and, fellow Hall of Famer Shuei Nakamura played at Pro Tour Philadelphia Skins game, one that Heezy top-aided. Like, they just played this deck of all legends, and then the paddle, the thing that allows legends to tap for mana or something like that, or tap to cast a legend. And so they had like this entire engine built around what was supposed to be a disadvantage on a card type, but it actually created a facilitation for additional resources for them. What if the additional casting cost stricture on certain creatures, because they're multicolored, becomes a mana optimization opportunity, like by playing multiple monuments? Like, that's obviously beyond the ken of how they're intended to be played, and so often identifying those areas is actually what makes really high value decks.
Trophy Mage is an interesting card for pulling together decks that use multiple monuments, right? Like it's hard to just jam 8 monuments, for instance, right?
Yeah, agree. Yeah,
but like,
maybe one of each or something.
But like, maybe you play one of each. Maybe you play one of 2 different ones. Maybe you play 3 copies of the green one, 1 copy of the red one. I don't know. There's like a variety of different ways you could do it. But if you have Trophy Mage, you could actually go get a second monument, or just go get whichever monument is appropriate for this spot. Or it's like you're playing with more monuments without having to. And if you already have the monument, I mean, you can also go get Inspiring Statuary.
Yeah, that's true. Inspiring Statuary gets really exciting with a lot of these artifacts.
Yes. So this is a little bit of a different direction, but it's still a combo card. But it can be used fair as well. I'm curious if you've thought much about As Foretold.
As Foretold, is that the blue one?
Yep. 2 and a blue enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Put a time counter on As Foretold. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold.
So, As Foretold, I'm not sure about the standard deck for it yet, but this is very, very Aether Vial-ish. I mean that in a very complimentary way. The most obvious implementation of As Foretold, I think, is actually not in standard, though. Right?
You're talking about with like Restore Balance, Ancestral Visions, Lotus Bloom, Living End, any of that stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that kind of allows you to cast those cards. Like, so those cards are often disadvantageous because they take time if you draw them. So this takes away the inherent negative condition on those cards.
Yeah, I mean, As Foretold it's kind of wild that you can now play 4 Karyzev's Expertise and 4 As Foretold. Right? Like, you could load your deck up with uncastable cards now.
Well, the other thing about As Foretold is it's once each turn. So it's like once on my turn and once on your turn, right?
Right.
Like,
now, you can't cast the zeros that aren't instants that way. But that's actually part of what I'm curious about your thoughts of As Foretold in Standard. Because when you put As Foretold in Standard, yes, on turn 3, it does nothing. But on turn 4, you get 1 mana on your turn, assuming you can spend it, 1 mana on your opponent's turn, assuming that you have a 1 mana instant, and then 2 mana on your turn. And at that point, you've already gotten 4 mana, but you've had to wait a little while. But then you also get 2 mana on your opponent's turn, and it's effectively mana of any color, right? But then you get 3 mana on your turn, and now you're just like spiraling out of control with how much power you're getting, right? Like how much power to win the game. Like, you can then cast Spell Queller on your opponent's turn. I'm just wondering if you can just start to generate such a big advantage with As Foretold to actually just play it straight up in Standard.
So there are 2 really potentially very limiting conditions on As Foretold. One of them is you don't get to pick, right? Like, if I'm playing an Aether Vial, I can pick whether or not I want to put the counter on it.
No, but it's purely better. It's X or less.
Oh, it's X or less?
Yeah, you just have this from now on.
Oh, wow, this is insane. I actually just glossed over the or less words.
No, you're right. It would be very restricting if it wasn't As for less. This is not just some jar of eyeballs. A brain in a jar or whatever. This is not just some brain in a jar. As Foretold is X or less both players' turns.
Oh my god. This card is bananas. Then you just play a bunch of cheap instants.
Yeah. Yeah, or flash creatures too. But so one of the things I like about having
you could just
flash,
never lose a counterspell war, right? Like, you cast this on turn 3 if it resolves, or turn 4 with a dispel. Like, it just sticks. That's it.
I mean, it's definitely slow, because remember, it's a 3 mana sorcery speed card with no impact on the game.
Yeah, but that's exactly what you want in some matchups.
And then the mana advantage just starts getting crazy, assuming you can spend it, because sometimes you can't. You know, like you want to have. I think if you play As Foretold, you want to have a lot of instants that cost 1 or 2.
Yes.
Because you're going to be playing instants that cost 1 or 2 on turn 1 or 2, if like under a lot of circumstances anyway. But then when you have As Foretold, you're going to want to have 2 more 1-cost cards out the gate, by the next turn, and then you're going to want to have 2 2-cost cards by the following turn. And you still want to have some expensive enough cards that you're actually getting your money's worth for when you are when you're actually starting to tick it up, right? Like once you start getting it up to being relatively large. So I don't know. I mean, like one of the things I like with As Foretold is some sort of a Vizier of the Menagerie or Duskwatch Recruiter, something that can just give you a ton of cards. Because normally the bottleneck with Vizier and Duskwatch Recruiter is how much mana you have. But when you have As Foretold, in many ways you're getting triple your mana worth, right? Like you can just spend all of your mana finding more cards to play.
I think there's probably a configuration where your deck is As Foretold, like all just cheap 1 and 2 casting cost instants, maybe 3 casting cost instants if you're gonna talk about like a hard counter, and then just glimmers and torrential gearhulks at the top. I mean, you don't have to be a pig about it, right? If you're just
remember, it's not just sorceries and instants. This thing can play creatures or enchantments.
Yeah, I'm happy to play my torrential gearhulk for free.
But you can play Cast Out in your deck so that when you actually have 4 mana, and when your thing is up to 4, you're getting your money's worth. But when you don't have that kind of extra mana, you can just cycle it. No big deal.
I think this card is going to be spectacular. I didn't even realize about the extra less.
There's a reason this one's a mythic.
It's good. It's Aether Vial. Like,
it's also interesting if you play any of the expertises, right? Like, if you, As Foretold, down an expertise, you also get whatever the other card is for free also, in addition. It's just kind of cute.
Yeah. I think this card wants a lot of card advantage to it, like, just +1 card type stuff, glimmers or things along those lines. Just because it's going to give you so much mana facility, like you're just going to run out of cards in hand like it's like tripling.
That's why
basically.
Yeah, so that's why I was talking about Duskwatch Recruiter and Vizier. Yeah.
If you don't have something to do with your mana, you're just going to run out of cards, and that's no fun.
Well, Lifecrafter's Bestiary is really cute with this, right? Because Lifecrafter's Bestiary, you're effectively never running out of cards.
Yeah, and you actually have spare mana to pay for the Lifecrafter's Bestiary.
Right. What about the As Foretold in some sort of a Spirits deck, taking advantage of how many flash creatures they have? Do you think they just aren't going to play enough 1s and 2s? I mean, enough 1s?
I could totally see As Foretold being like some sort of a matchup breaker, but I don't really envision this card in the main deck of a Spirits deck. Like that deck doesn't have that much card advantage, and all of its cards are so cheap.
What about with Animation Module? Animation Module is, of course, that 1-cost artifact from Kaladesh that it's got 2 different parts to it. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are placed on a permanent you control, you may pay a colorless. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. And then it also has 3 colorless and tap. Choose a counter on target permanent or player. Give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. So if you have Animation Module, you put your Animation Module down, and then you As Foretold on 3. On turn 4, you jump to 2, and you can go 2/2 and get your Animation Module mana back. And then on the following turn, you can go 4/4. Do you think there's enough there, or is that just way too much investment?
I think I bristle at the investment. I think that there's the speed to payoff ratio there is not what I'm in for.
That's fair. What other stuff from this set do you have your eye on?
I like the, just in general, not like a specific card. I like the open-ended flexibility of the set in general, right? I like the fact that there are so many cards that they can be good together, like, you know, just new perspectives and all those cycling cards that we talked about before. But there's all these cards that are just like, could be one-off additions to other strategies, or they could be played in dedicated new strategies. I don't know if that's not answering your question at all. Like, I just think about like Glorybringer, right? Like, Glorybringer is this great card that is in the abstract just a great Gideon killer. In the abstract, just a 4/4 flying haste creature for 5, which is, you know, not off the bench, you know, just on those stats. But then in specific, can be best buddies with Exert. I'm sorry, always watching and other Exert creatures, right? That's a thing that you could just play it for, right? Or if you look at the Anointed Procession, you know, you can play dedicated tokens, you can play one color tokens, you can play like multiple different kinds of color tokens. You have an infinite combo that's available. I think that Anointed Procession, Eldrazi Displacer, Drowner is actually extraordinarily exciting. Like, I love the fact that there's another infinite combo, and this time the creatures are just all pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Does Eldrazi Displacer break up Copycat?
No.
No?
Nope. No, because it just re-triggers it again. There's no spot where it actually gets them.
That stinks.
So here's an interesting little... I don't know how all the pieces fit together, but you know Wayward Servant? That white-black 2/2, whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life?
Yep.
And then there's that other zombie enabler, that the one that's a 5/4, Plague Belcher. It's 2 and a black for a 5/4 zombie beast with menace, and when it enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control, and whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Both excellent cards for a zombie aggro deck, right? Like, you could play them as part of a package involving lots of straightforward zombie stuff to start with.
Well, they certainly both pay you off, right? And they pay off in a consistent way.
Yeah, I happen to think they're pretty good rates, too, both of them. But Plague Belcher and Wayward Servant, either one of those, if you have either one of those in play, when you have Liliana and Felidar Guardian and a Sack Outlet, like if you're playing Defiant Salvager, which is not a zombie, unfortunately, but if you're playing Defiant Salvager or Yahenni, Undying Partisan, if you have either of those in play and you do your whole Liliana, Felidar Guardian stuff,
yep,
you just kill your opponent outright. You don't actually have to put any of the weird cards in your deck because, I mean, you could just be literally white-black if you wanted, because Liliana makes the creature a zombie. So you actually just get an infinite number of zombies entering the battlefield and an infinite number of zombies leaving the battlefield. It's kind of interesting, right? I mean, because like Liliana's good on her own.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I think there's enough fuel for a white-black deck. That's actually why I was asking you before. Do you potentially envision that Liliana and Felidar Guardian combo only in a 5-color Saheeli deck, or also,
no, not only, definitely not only.
You know, could it be just played in a white-black deck?
Yeah, it could. You know, like there's so much zombie stuff anyway. I think zombies is going to be tier 1. Grave, the 1-drop, the 1-drop 2/1 that keeps coming back. The Dread Wanderer.
Yep.
It enters the battlefield, tap 2 and a black, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only when you can play a sorcery, and only if you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. I think Dread Wanderer is just a fantastic, absolutely stunning card. Absolutely just phenomenal, right? And then you've already got the Colossus. I think the Colossus doesn't get enough respect anyway. The problem with the Colossus has always just been there hasn't been enough of a supporting cast, so it's just not getting big enough. But if you just play Dread Wanderer and Crypt Breaker as your 1-drops, those are both excellent cards.
I mean, Crypt Breaker is an outstanding card.
And Dread Wanderer is an outstanding card. And then for 2-drops, you can just play Restless Dead. Is it right? Relentless Dead? Whatever the BB.
The BB one that's really hard to kill and then also brings back other guys, yeah.
And itself, right? But if you have Relentless Dead and you Plague Belcher, your Plague Belcher gives you a convenient way to kill your Relentless Dead so that you can get anything else back you want. But that's one of the challenges with Relentless Dead sometimes is finding a way to kill it. And all the menace stacks up. Plague Belcher has menace. The Relentless Dead has menace. And if you play the new Zombie Lord of the Accursed, it's 2/3 zombie. Other zombies you control get +1/+1, and you can pay a colorless and a black. All zombies gain menace until end of turn. All this menace stuff is gonna I think it makes it tough for somebody to just hold off all the zombies by blocking, and that's particularly interesting given how many of the zombies are so resilient to removal.
I think that the fact that the Plague Belcher works so well with the 2-drop is insane, right? You were talking about how the rate on this card is already very good. Like that right there, that combination of just 2-drop into Plague Belcher, put 2 -1/-1 counters on the 2-drop to get it in the graveyard, right? It dies and you get the ping, and then you also have in the graveyard to start shenanigans.
But you could also just pay a black to get it back to your hand.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, depending on how much you have untapped.
The putting the 2 counters on the Lord of the Accursed is not too bad either. Since that guy, he'll still live. He'll be a 0/1, still pumping your whole team, and you might not want to get into combat with that guy anyway. First, because you don't want him to die, and second, because you want to give all your guys menace. Another nice target, the 1-drop, Dread Wanderer. Totally reasonable. Sometimes you just get it back.
Can you put both of the -1/-1 counters on a creature that only has 1 toughness?
Yep.
Oh, that's cheating.
It's great, right?
Yes, that's great. That's like the definition of great. Cheating is the definition of great.
And it's not like having a 5/4 menace is that bad of a thing.
Oh, no, it's a great thing. And the fact that you get the ping in and then these creatures aren't even permanently dead, this is all really good. My question to you is not even, is it going to be black-white zombies? Because there's some incentive to that. But what about black colorless? Do you think that's a waste?
What are you playing colorless for?
Eldrazi's.
Nah, I don't think any of the Eldrazi's are as good as the zombies.
You don't think that the black and 1 2/1 flyer that you can pay 2 to Necrotal them is good enough? Or I guess it's a lot of work to get things RFG'd so that you can get paid back on the -3/-1 creature, -3/-3 creature.
Yeah, why bother? I don't know, Fatal Push and Grasp of Darkness are totally fine. I think there's reasons to play mono black, just good mana, right? Yeah. There's reasons to play black-white, that Wayward Servant. And it's not like Shambling Vent or Gideon are slouches, if you can go that route. And there's even that, the +2/+1 instant for 2 if you want. The zombies you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. I don't know that you really want to go that route, but if you go in a tokens deck, that's a lot of damage, right? 2 mana for +2/+1 is that's pretty intense. But I don't know you even want to go that route. There's also blue, though. And I don't know that you even need blue mana, but if you play mostly mono black, the first little bit of blue you play is basically free. It's pretty close to free to play for Choked Estuary. But if you just play Prized Amalgam is synergizes with a lot of the different stuff that the zombies have going on.
There's no way I'm going to play blue and not play the bounce a guy, they discard a card.
Why?
You don't think that card's awesome?
What if you're only playing 4 blue mana in your whole deck? Because you're not planning on casting your Prized Amalgam.
All right.
I don't know.
How do I get him in my graveyard?
There's a variety of ways. You can play Crypt Breaker. You can play the new Miasmic Mummy.
Yeah, Crypt Breaker's good enough. Done.
Sweet.
Agreed.
Sweet. Dude, I think zombies are so good. Here's a tough one. I haven't figured out the right way to crack this nut. Maybe you can provide some insight. X blue blue. It's the wonder one. You know, it's X blue blue. X target creatures can't be blocked this turn. Until end of turn, those creatures gain whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Open into wonder. X blue blue.
So what are you asking about it?
How do you use it? What's the best thing you can do with it?
It's kind of weird because...
It is weird.
If you have a card like this and you're paying, let's say, upwards of 4 to 5, 4, 5, 6 mana, your expectation, and you have a bunch of creatures in play, is just usually to kill somebody, right? And this card has almost the inherent, I want to play at least one more turn clause to it. Because you're getting paid off by drawing cards, and, you guys are just unblockable. So I think it's probably a great breaker in Limited, and I don't know. I just think that it doesn't have an intuitive home in Constructed. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to pay in the 5-6 range, which is what you kind of... let's see, at 5, you're only getting 3 creatures in, right? But if you're paying that much, typically you just overrun someone to death. I'm talking about, generally speaking, for sorcery speed, medium to heavy cost creature boost cards. Like, why would I, this my macro question is, why would I do this instead of decimating provinces, for example? It's just because I don't have green? Am I like a blue creature deck?
No. There's lots of little things you could do. Like, for instance, let's say you have Combat Celebrant, 2 and a red, 4/1, that when it attacks, if it hasn't exerted this turn, it can exert to untap all your other creatures. And after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So Combat Celebrant, if you have, say you have like a Scourge Wolf and a Combat Celebrant, and those are your only 2 creatures, you can spend 4 mana, and let's, just since we're in Magical Christmas Land, let's just take it as a given that we got enough Delirium to Scourge Wolf. But if you just X's 2 for these 2, you attack with both, exert the Combat Celebrant, you'll automatically hit them because they're unblockable. So your opponent takes 8, and you draw 3 cards because Double Strike draws extra cards from this.
Oh, that's exciting.
Then you untap the Scourge Wolf and hit him for 4 more. So you now have hit them for 12, and you've drawn 5 cards. And that's with X's 2. I mean, it's a big ask to have Scourge Wolf, Combat Celebrant, and they just both live. But
and UX.
And then you spend 4.
Yeah, just casting all these cards, sure.
No, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, another possibility is to just use this with token making. Right? Like, if you have, if you're just playing like a bunch of creatures that can make mana, or tokens, and maybe that Cryptolith Rites, right? Like, it's not that hard for a token deck to have like 5 tokens in play and not have the game already just sewn up.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not trivial either, but like, it's kind of cute that sometimes you just go like this and you're like, Brain Geyser for 4, Brain Geyser for 5. It's probably the wrong way, but it's interesting. I don't know. There's something about this card. It's probably just wrong, but it's such a challenging nut to crack because of how opposite make all your creatures unblockable is with Brain Geyser.
Yeah, but I think that the card isn't... I mean, maybe I'm reading this wrong. I think it's intended for, like, really engaging limited play, not to be a constructed killer. Right? I don't know. That's just my reading of the card. I just think that, like, you're just putting up a toll booth instead of getting to the destination you want to. Be like, oh, I have an opportunity to pay $2 to continue to be on the road, right? Like that's what I see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the best way to utilize our creatures. I don't know, but it seems to be in the wrong colors and have the wrong payoff to me. Those are
a scathing critique, to be sure.
Like, it's definitely interesting. Like, I would definitely write an essay about what you could do at different casting costs with this card. But that said, it doesn't scale very well, right? So, like, if I have an overrun type effect, typically I can just pay. Obviously there's the card overrun. It's not currently legal. I'm just making an example. I don't pay any more if I have 10 creatures in play or 2 creatures in play. All right? It just scales across all of them. This one, if I have 2 creatures and I have 10 creatures, I pay more than 5 times the mana to get back. I get more of a payoff too, but it's not really in line with how much more I'm paying.
You know what would be sick is a card that's if there was a card that's 1 red, put 2 1/1 double strike tokens, create 2 1/1 double strike tokens. If you just went turn 3, make 2 1/1 double strike tokens. Turn 4, make them both unblockable. Draw 4 cards. I guess that's a combo for a world that doesn't exist.
I mean, it's interesting.
We can fantasize.
All right, so let me ask you one final question for this week. Is your favorite card to get brewing on still the Brain Geyser, or have you changed your allegiance to somebody else?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I think Pull from Tomorrow is the most attractive card to me. The only other card that can compare, and actually when I was playing the other day, proxied it as I couldn't remember the whole name, so I just wrote Joy on all the cards just because it's the embodiment of joy, and that's Vizier of the Menagerie. Like the Vizier, the green one, the 3/4 that lets you just play creatures off the top.
Yeah.
That card seems so good and also outrageously fun.
Yeah, I like that card a lot too. It's very exciting.
What's your favorite card?
Probably I have a different favorite card every time I think about the set. I think I like Shepherd Monitor the most right now. It's just so everything I like. It's compacted. It's card advantage. It fixes your mana. It's uncounterable sometimes. I can imagine playing it in different clever ways, and I can imagine playing it as a kind of a blunt force instrument. All those things together are pretty cool to me. Well, I also like Renewed Faith, right? Like, there's an old favorite. Maybe Drakehaven. Like, I like a lot of the cycling-ish stuff, obviously.
Sure. All right. Well, it sounds like we got a lot to be cracking on.
Yeah. Just want to give a shout out before we say goodbye. Just a shout out to Rick Wood from Patreon.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks for supporting us, Rick, and all of our patrons up on Patreon. We're Top Level Podcast. You can find us at toplevelpodcast.com or on Twitter or Facebook or Patreon, Instagram, Top Level Podcast, all those places.
And share us with your friends. We're like the chicken pox when you're 5.
No, we're not like the chicken pox when you're 5.
No, that's good. You have chicken pox parties. Dude, I had a chicken pox party when I was a kid. It's good. Then everybody, it's under controlled circumstances. Good that you get it out of the way at a convenient time, and then the kid doesn't, then they have an immunity. It's good.
No, I don't want them immunity. I want it more like they carry us with them forever. That's the kind of chicken pox that I am. Like, you might look like you got over the chicken pox, but it's still in you. That's the Top Level Podcast.
Right, but that's chicken pox too. That's what I mean.
That's what you.
That's how chicken pox works.
BBB, sacrifice a bunch of stuff, discard stuff, but listen to Top Level Podcast.
Awesome. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my